Welcome back to Empire Law. I'm Abby, and today I'm here with Deborah Song from Empire Law. Good to have you back, Deborah. Thank you so much for being here today. Today, we are zooming in on Norco. What evidence actually wins a car accident case here in Riverside County, whether you get rear-ended on Hamner Avenue, hit at the I-15 and Highway 91 interchange, or in a fender bender on 6th Street. The evidence is what decides whether you get fair compensation through the Superior Court of California, County of Riverside, or walk away with nothing. We will hit the police report, the photos, and witnesses you control, the video that proves your case, and how a Norco attorney puts it all together under California law. So getting into question one, let's start with the document that anchors almost every car accident case here in Norco. Why is the police accident report often one of the most important documents in a car accident claim in Norco?
It's the closest thing we have to an official, unbiased snapshot of the immediate aftermath of an accident. For example, if you are here in Norco, depending on what street, what freeway, what road you are on, there'll be usually two, sometimes three different jurisdiction as far as police goes. So if you're on the road on Hamner or on a local street, not the freeway in Norco, you have mainly the Riverside Sheriff's Department who come out to do the reports. On occasion, I have seen the Jurupa Valley Police Department make reports, but I highly recommend if you do get into an accident and you don't want to call 911, and you want to call either a sheriff's department or the police department to come out and help you make a police report, I would recommend the sheriff's department. Even though they both take a long time, at least the sheriff's department are pretty reliable when it comes to writing up these reports. I've had cases with the Jurupa Valley Police Department where they don't give you an ETA on when the police report will be ready, and we're just waiting until infinity and beyond for this police report. Ultimately never comes. If you are on the freeway in Norco, let's say the 15 or the 91, then you will call a California Highway Patrol officer, and that's their jurisdiction. The highway jurisdiction is for the CHP officers to come and write the report. But ultimately, the reason why these police reports are very important is because insurance adjusters aren't at the scene at the time, and neither are we, the lawyers. So the adjuster relies heavily on this document because it's generated by a neutral law enforcement officer. It sets the baseline for the entire claims process. A lot of times when we're trying to move forward in a case to get our client's vehicle fixed or move forward with the liability determination and trying to find out, are you going to accept liability or not? Usually they're always telling me we're waiting for the police report. And based on what this police report says, it shapes who the insurance company blames before any lawsuits are even filed.
Most people have never actually read a police accident report before their own crash. What information is in a Norco accident report that can affect a compensation claim?
Whether if it's the Jurupa Valley Police Department or the Riverside Sheriff's Department or California Highway Patrol, it all usually has the same vital pieces of information. Number one, it's going to contain the date the accident occurred. Number two, it's going to contain the time the accident occurred, the precise location, the weather conditions. Sometimes it'll include the diagram of the crash to explain and visually show how the accident happened and who hit who. Then it will also include things like statements from both drivers, as long as both drivers were present when if the injuries are severe enough, the ambulance will take one or the other. And sometimes the police officers aren't very vigilant about following up and meeting you at the hospital or following up with you after your discharge. So sometimes the police report only has one, but most of the time they should have two statements from both drivers. and then contact information for any independent witnesses who stayed to talk to the police officers. They will also notate any visible injuries that they saw and then any property damage that they saw as well. But out of all of the information you can find on any of this police report, the most important one, I think, is what the officer's assessment is as far as who is at fault and whether any California vehicle citations were issued.
So the report is filed and the insurance company gets a copy. This is where a lot of people lose control of their claim. How do insurance companies use police reports when evaluating car accident claims in California?
They'll use them as a shield or a sword. They'll use them to defend their position to the most extent they can. If the report says you're at fault, for example, they will use it to deny or drastically minimize your claim. If it points to the other party, then we use it to push for a fair settlement. However, adjusters do treat police reports like gospel truth, even if the officer made a mistake or only heard one side of the story.
And the officer is human, documenting a chaotic scene on Hamner Avenue or the I-15, sometimes in the dark or the rain, and errors happen. So what should drivers do if they notice an error in the police accident report?
The first thing that you have to do is act quickly. Don't hem, don't haw, don't wonder, don't give them time to figure out what they're going to do, because once the police report is out, it's out. And when you do act on it and you do contact them to let them know that a change needs to be had, changing a police report, ultimately, it's difficult. It's easier if it's a factual error. For example, if they misspelled your name or they got the insurance information wrong, that's something that a police department will usually issue an amendment pretty easily. But if it's a narrative error and it changes the narrative of how the officer wrote down how the accident happened, it's going to involve more than you just calling them up to let them know that they made a mistake. So sometimes the CHP officer arrives late and they only write down one driver's story. You can't just ask them to cross it out or add your side of the story. You have to submit a formal supplemental statement. And along with that, you have to back that up with evidence like medical records or dashcam footage for the officers to officially file an amendment.
And let's say that your phone is in your pocket and the scene is right in front of you and witnesses are about to walk away. How important are photographs and witness statements when building a compensation case in Norco?
It is very important because sometimes the police officers, they will write down what they subjectively believe. Even though it is seen as objective, ultimately their statements and opinions are subjective to them and their own experiences as police officers. But let's say, for example, when you have a police report and you get involved in a car accident, one of the things that the police will write down and notate is the severity of the impact, the severity of the damages to the vehicles involved. It'll either be marked as minor, moderate, or severe. And as a police officer, they've seen it all. So even though a normal 12-person jury or us, we would look at certain photos and be like, wow, that's a severe impact. The airbags deployed, there's shattered glass, and there's crushed, crumpled areas. We would consider that severe, but maybe that particular police officer's seen things that are a lot more horrendous than that. And so they mark it as moderate or maybe even minor. So when you have the photos of the damage to the car, photos of skid marks, photos of traffic signals, and the property damage. If you have immediate physical bruising, photos of the bruising, things like that can trump what the police officer wrote down in his report, because the adjusters can see for themselves and they can make that determination of how the 12 jurors will look at your case and what they will think, because ultimately they are the ultimate deciders of your case, not that police officer. So you want to make sure to take those photos before the vehicles are towed away and before your physical wounds are healed.
We are in an era where cameras are everywhere. So, like dash cams, traffic cameras, business surveillance, even doorbell cameras. How can video evidence like dash cams or surveillance footage impact accident claims in Norco?
Unlike people, video doesn't blink and they don't forget. Dash cam footage and surveillance video from a local Norco business can entirely flip a liability dispute, especially on Hamner. That's where all the businesses are. And that's where there's usually bumper to bumper traffic when it's during the rush hour time, because it does connect between Corona, Norco, Eastvale. I forget what's on top of that. I think Rancho Cucamonga or Ontario. It goes a long way. So it's a high foot traffic area with lots of businesses. So if the other driver claims that they had a green light, for example, but there's a nearby store or an AM, PM, a gas station, security camera that you can visibly see, that's one of the first things I would do. Get out of the car, look around you, see if there's any cameras. If you notice there's any cameras, take a picture of those cameras, because the cameras are. So if they want to send out a private investigator, let's say, they can show them that picture and be like, that camera, go to that camera, ask them for the footage. But the catch to that, it's urgency. So these businesses, their footage is overwritten usually every few days, because they don't have an infinite amount of storage in their memory card or SD card, wherever their footage gets stored. So we have to send the businesses something called a evidence preservation letter. And these letters basically tell the business owners, like, hey, this footage needs to be saved and put aside because we might have to end up using it later in litigation or something like that. And if they are nice enough and the private investigator is skillful enough, they can kind of not swindle, but they can kind of sway the business owners and be very nice. And sometimes the business owners will actually just give it to you. You might have to pay a couple dollars just to, I don't want to say bribe. They have no reason to give you that footage. So they're going out of their way to collect it for you. So if you're nice to them, you offer them something, most likely they will give you that footage.
Okay, we have covered the police report and the evidence you gather yourself here in Norco, the photos, witnesses, video. Now let's talk about the heavyweight evidence, medical records, experts, traffic citations, and how it all comes together in a Riverside County case. So we covered what happened at the scene. Now let's talk about what happened to the person. What role does medical evidence play in proving injuries in a car accident case in Riverside County?
In a personal injury case, even though a lawyer like me will believe you when you say it, you can't just say that you were hurt. You have to prove it through an unyielding paper trail. Just like the police report and video footage is a piece of evidence that proves that you're not at fault, to prove that you are hurt, there needs to be paper trail from an outsider, more likely than not a doctor. So and this happens a lot, if an officer writes down in their police report that you've reported no injuries, or sometimes you call the insurance company to open up a claim right away because they tell you that's what you're supposed to do. At that time, you have no injuries, and that's usually the first question they'll ask is, are you hurt? Are you okay? Then you say, yeah, I'm fine. I'm not hurt. I'm okay. You better have proof within that reasonable time frame thereafter. If you do have pain, if you are experiencing symptoms from the trauma center or an urgent care, showing that you do have symptoms and a doctor has notated that with treatment recommendations for the future, because it's very understandable. You're in shock and you have adrenaline that's hiding the pain right at the scene of the accident. Usually it doesn't kick in until the night of, when you're laying down to rest, or even the day after when you wake up. But medical records, diagnostic imaging, x-rays, MRIs, and doctor's note, those are all little links to an evidence chain that connect the physical trauma directly to the crash. So when you say things like no injuries, it cuts that link. But if you have a lot of other links right thereafter, it closes that gap a little more and it can help. So that's the importance of medical records.
Expert witnesses are not people who saw the accident, but they are professionals brought in to analyze the evidence and explain what it means to a jury. How do lawyers use expert witnesses and accident reconstruction to strengthen a case?
We use experts to basically become a translator of complex data. And they translate that data. It's raw data. Let's say, for example, they're collecting information from a vehicle's black box. It's called EDR data. So they plug in their device and they'll extract evidence and data. I will look at that data. And even when I look at it, it's kind of like coding. If you've ever seen coding on trying to build a website or doing computer engineering or science, that kind of stuff, you will look at it and be like, it's a total different language. And that's exactly what it is. It's like a code, it's language that I don't understand. And only these specialists, these experts, these forensic scientists can read it. And when they do read it, they're able to translate and communicate that with us and the jury and the other side of what that data says. Of course, the other side is probably going to have their own expert to say it says something else, but those data from that black box, let's say, for example, can show that even though the impact was low speed, let's say it was just a fender bender, it was a slight hit, the property damage wasn't, your vehicle was repaired in a week or something like that, then these biomechanical engineers, these accident reconstructionists can help explain exactly the G forces, that's what they're called, G forces, applied to your spine that caused the disc herniation when you were hit from that accident. So these experts basically provide a scientific muscle, a scientific explanation that explains to the insurance companies why it is that you are hurt, despite the fact that the car doesn't look that badly damaged. And these are the kind of evidence that the insurance companies cannot dismiss easily, unlike, let's say, your testimony saying that you are hurt. It's a lot stronger because it's backed by science.
When the responding officer issues a citation at the scene, like a speeding ticket, failure to yield, running a red light, that citation becomes part of the evidence file. So do traffic violations documented at the scene strengthen a compensation claim in California?
Immensely. So under California law, we have a concept called negligence per se. It's a Latin term, but it is a concept that is under play in California law. And basically, it states that if a driver violates a safety statute, which is laid out by the California Vehicle Code, if they violated any of those codes, such as speeding, driving under the influence, running a stop sign, and that violation is what caused the accident to happen, then the law presumes that they were negligent. So without those codes, we would just have to prove with a lot more evidence to explain why the other side breached the duty that they owed to you as a reasonable driver on the road, and what they did was unreasonable because a reasonable person would not have done that, right? So instead of overcomplicating it like that, if you have a violation, especially if it's in the police report, you have a violation of a California law, then it makes it so much easier to say, look, they violated this law. This is the reason why. The violation of the law is the reason why this accident happened in the first place. You're done. Liability is proven. Then you can move on to focusing on causation, which is, did the impact cause your injuries that you claim happened and that you sustained due to this accident? So a documented traffic citation, which is usually on page 2 of the police report, significantly shifts the leverage into our hands.
Deborah, last question before we wrap it up. And this is the question that everyone wants the answer to. Out of all of it, some evidence carries more weight than the rest. So, what are the most powerful pieces of evidence that tend to win car accident lawsuits?
The more powerful pieces of evidence will be things like police report and layering it with things like scene photos or video footage. If there's any independent witness statements, those are all evidence that comes into play when it comes to liability to prove that you're not at fault. But then on top of that, if you anchor it with medical records to show that you were injured and there is a mention of a car accident and you follow those treatment orders and there's a causal chain that connects every treatment from each other, that's when an insurance adjuster sees that the evidence chain is seamless and they'll realize that they can't win at trial. And so ultimately they will settle the case.
That combination point is critical. It's never just one thing, it is everything working together. Deborah, that is an incredible breakdown. So, for someone watching this who has been in a car accident in Norco and is trying to figure out whether they have a strong case, what is the one thing you want them to remember about evidence?
Evidence is something that is documented outside of what comes out of your mouth or my mouth. So, anything that you can submit on a PDF, on a photo, outside of what you believe happened in your own testimony is what's going to help win the case. Because your truth, which is usually our truth, doesn't hold as more weight than these neutral third-party eyewitnesses. So document everything. I know it's hard to do, especially when you're in the middle of it all. So if you can take notes on this podcast and create like a little checklist and put a little list of what you need to collect, let's say photos, video footage, photos of security cameras nearby, any urgent cares you went to, any bruising, things of that nature, and registrations, license, insurance information, police report, all of that. Put a little box and check it off at the scene before you leave, to make sure you have everything. So you don't have to just trust your own memory, especially when you're high in shock and adrenaline. You're not going to remember everything. So just follow that checklist, gather everything before you leave the scene.
That is great advice. If you have been in a car accident in Norco and you are not sure whether your evidence is strong enough to pursue a claim, make that call. You can find Empire Law at www.inlandinjury.com or call them directly at 951-724-5307. Thank you for watching, and we will see you on the next episode of Empire Law.